Welcome back to the Right Hype podcast, a blueprint for creative entrepreneurs and professionals. I'm your host, Gavôn. It's a rainy Friday evening here in New York, and we are in the heart of the city in Times Square. It's February, so that means it's Black History Month. So why not take this opportunity to invite a Black executive multi-hyphenate to talk about his experience. Today we have Daniel Cherry, also known as DC. And we met many years ago when I just started working in strategy. It was an incredible opportunity to work on his brand, Fras. Fras is inspired by the Jamaican saying, "Mi Fras man," which is a laid-back expression of enjoying good times with friends. It's certified organic, non-GMO, and vegan. And Fras is more than just an iced tea. It's a state of mind. We'll dive more into Fras later. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about DC and his accomplishments. DC is an award-winning marketer, business executive, strategist, brand innovator, and entrepreneur. I'm going to read off his resume because it's impressive and I believe in giving people their flowers.
Appreciate that.
After graduating the University of Pennsylvania, DC began his career in advertising at Crispin Porter and Bogusky, Wyden and Kennedy, and eventually became a managing partner at Anomaly. He served as a senior vice president of marketing at Diageo. He served as a CMO at Activation Blizzard Esports. He served as a senior vice president and general manager of DC Comics, where he oversaw DC Comics global publishing businesses and brand. Fun fact, he was instrumental in relaunching the acclaimed Black comic book label Milestone Media, a mentorship program focused on providing access, opportunity, and mentorship to Black and underrepresented creators. He is currently the SVP at Adidas, the brand with 3 stripes, and he's been on countless lists: Ebony's Power 100, Adweek CMO Vanguard, Sports Business Daily Top 40, and he was nominated as a Grammy Foundation board member, and many more. Welcome to the Right High Podcast, DC.
Wow. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you giving my flowers, and I'm here to represent all those who really helped me get here as well.
Awesome.
It's the community.
Awesome. Your work has impacted culture for over 25 years. As a kid growing up, did you always want to work in marketing and advertising?
Well, my parents can attest, so I want to make sure I first shout out Daniel Cherry Jr. and Sheila Cherry, because as you know, I always say I am my father's son and my grandfather's grandson, which is why I carry the suffix the third on my name. So even my email address, it has the suffix in my email address in my current company. But that's because, as you asked, I had a wall on a little small street in a small town in Ohio called Alliance, and that street is called Jersey Street. And my parents can, know this and can appreciate this. I would cut out magazines, and I had Upscale magazine at the time. So I had all the pictures of all the people you can imagine. An Upscale magazine. I had the Source magazine. I had all the talent that you can imagine. The Big Daddy Kane cassette stuck to the wall. All the things that you want. And that was my vision board. I didn't know anything about vision boards then. But when I go back home, because that's still up, my mom kept many of those things up on the wall for years. I can now attest that I've met many of those people on the vision board unknowingly, right? You have no idea you're going to do this in your life. But it was pretty amazing that, yes, that kind of what I believe vision that I set for myself early on in my life, I actually achieved many of them. And I think it's really important to the power of belief, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, because candidly, it was subconscious. I didn't know that I would be able to do the things I'm doing now, because many of the jobs I've had didn't exist when I was coming up. But I think you build that momentum mentally first and then spiritually. And I think that it'll put you on a path whether you know it or not. So you have to surrender to it and be very conscious with what you put around you, right? That was energy I put in my room. And that energy, I think, projected itself on my career.
Yeah, I can resonate with that a lot. I remember dreaming of working in fashion and moving to New York, and I had a vision board myself where it was sort of, I want to do these things. I think our younger selves would be so proud of us because we didn't know what was in store, but we made sure that we created the grounds, the foundation for that to happen. So that's an amazing testament. I want to continue like thinking back around your background
Mm-hmm.
and where you're from. Tell us, how did you get to this place in your life?
Through a village of people who cared a lot about me. Every single step on my journey was an angel that entered my life. Some I sought out, some sought me out. But I was open to the support and to the help. And I was humble enough to know I couldn't do it alone. I think that's one of the most important things that talented people need to know, is that you cannot do anything alone, right? The folk at Audi and our team in OGLA in Los Angeles, Originals Los Angeles, know that I've said this many a time. It's something I really learned from the likes of Fab Five Freddy and others. But everything cool, right, that you experience in life is started by someone, somewhere, with some friends. So you got to have a person, a place, and a crew. And to me, that's what streetwear is. That's what, fashion has been to me, is movements based on place, crew, and people with belief. And so you can't do it alone. And I think that's one of the most important things that we all should know is, while you may have a dream, that dream takes a lot of people to bring to life. And you can only get them around you if you have that level of humility and that selflessness.
Wow. You're dropping gems right now. What's a fun fact about yourself that few people know?
It's something simple, because we'll go heavy here later. I'm deathly afraid of heights. Even driving into Sonoma or right across a bridge somewhere, I got to grip the wheel tight because I overcome it consistently. So I don't think anyone who's been with me traveling would even know it, but I have to. And I think that's my own little kind of feather in my cap that I overcome these things because I got people to support. Literally, I got kids in the back seat, my wife. I got to get from point A to point B. But yeah, something simple that no one really knows that I would never even talk about is that, which is breaking news here. No one knew that. But yeah, deathly afraid of heights.
You heard it here first. I agree. I think there's been many of friends tried to persuade me into skydiving, and I told them that's one thing that I'm okay with not ever doing. I'm okay with being 2 feet on the ground at all times as much as possible. But yeah, I know we all carry our own things and we all overcome our own things. So, you're never too old to still have fears and still be overcoming things.
We do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back, you've held various positions, agencies, in-house, which one was your favorite out of all of your experiences so far and why?
That's a great question. You think about, and I haven't done a lot of reflection because I'm, 1 foot forward always, right? I still feel like I have a lot more to give than I've already given. But it's really important to me, the impact I can have on people. So the roles that mean the most to me are where I can support the most amount of people achieve their dreams, right? I think as a leader, your job is to create the conditions for other success, whether they succeed inside that company or in life. And I've had a few stints where I feel like I was able to create the biggest impact. And sometimes that's through trials and tribulations. Sometimes that's through great success. But I think the run I've had in advertising, whether it be at Anomaly or Widen, in my career, because I did that relatively early, but I didn't realize the impact I was having on friends and seeing where they've been and gone on to. Because I think that one of the things that I'm proudest of is not just the place I work or the work I've done, it's the fact that I've actually delivered futures, right? So not products. I think I've helped create futures for people and that they've been economically stable, right? Because we didn't come from trust funds. So if I can give someone a job and a career, that means a lot to me, way more than an award. So I think for the friends and the crew that I've built and the mentees that I've had over the years, mostly in advertising, some after as well, I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, is the fact that they've gotten to get the experience, get the wisdom, get the mentorship, get the support, right? I took a lot of bullets for people that they may not even know, because when you're in those seats, they're hotter, the lights are brighter, and the conversations are more frank than you ever thought. And when you're in those rooms, it's important that I carry the names of people who aren't in those rooms with me, because if I don't, who will? And so I think that's what I'm proudest of.
Wow. I mean, that's something that, many of us who are starting our careers in the middle, at the beginnings of our careers, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in, just starting to get, our foot indoors and really understand what it means to be a part of a business, also run a business and contribute to growth. That's something that, you have done in many capacities in different, categories, whether it's the luxury sector or CPG or sports. They require a different level of rigor. How did you apply yourself over the years to continue to open doors for yourself and for others?
I think it started with someone doing that for me first. So I was a young kid coming up and I got lucky, honestly, for an opportunity. Yes, I had the intellect. Yes, I had the, aggressive curiosity. Yes, I had the grades and all that. but I had the opportunity through a woman named Nadine McElwain. She was my principal in my middle school. And I went to one of those middle schools that, on my side of town, people didn't come, right? When people say that, affectionate term across the tracks, I lived across the tracks, right? There's a lot of my friends today that didn't want to come across the tracks to hang out with me and my friends. But she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. My grandparents saw it, but they didn't have the means to actually do anything about what they saw. They just spoke value into me. They spoke belief into me. So by the time she came with an opportunity, I had the belief because they spoke it into me, and I took advantage of it. And that was the Better Chance program. So I was a Better Chance scholar. I went from small town, right on the East Coast and Midwest to, a little town near Montecito, Santa Barbara. Completely different than anything I experienced. Never saw a Pacific Ocean before. I think that changed the trajectory of my life because I believed that I can see worlds that I'd never thought existed before. I thought they only existed in television. The reason why I bring that up is you talk about corporate culture. I was able to actually maneuver, in multiple environments young. So I've mastered multiple environments at an early age. And what I'd say to anybody starting their career is do not get comfortable in the crew and the clique you're with and the world you're involved in. If you're uptown, go downtown. If you're downtown, go to the suburbs. Find the communities and how they move. Because as a strategist, we started out, I'm a strategist, a planner. I observe professionally and see how people move, understand the kind of ecosystem they're involved in, the codes and the, kind of behaviors. And once I understood that, that helped me in my corporate career because I became well-versed in those codes and I can maneuver all the rooms because I understood and I had the experiences. So they talk Ivy League, I did that. Talk travel in Europe, I did that. Sports, did that. Fashion, did that. Like watches, me too. Right. And that was really important because I would think I was always amazed. And something that someone said to me earlier is, you'll be amazed, especially if you come from a group that has been oppressed or been marginalized or been outside. But when you're outside and you step inside, figuratively speaking, it's amazing that those inside the room can't comprehend that you understand the interior as well as the exterior. They only have one vantage point. You have multiple. So that multiplicity of perspective is something that you have as a competitive advantage that they can't comprehend. They don't even fear it. They can't comprehend it. They're just shocked and surprised that things they know. You've been to places they've been. You've had experiences that they've had. Now, we had to earn those experiences. For them, they've likely been handed down. So they almost took them for granted, where we had to cherish them, but we still have them, which to me is the thing that probably the most shocking thing is that the standards that they have, those others, when they believe that you have the same standards or higher standards, that is when problems arise in corporate America, is when you have the audacity of higher standards than those around you.
I'm curious, from your experience when you started out and you were getting exposure to corporate culture, and what are the certain things that they should be doing and practicing consistently?
When we go through crises in our lives, and I'm start there, you get prepared because you've been through it. So if you have been through, heaven forbid, earthquakes or floods or any of these, natural disasters, many people get smarter because of it, and they get go bags, they get emergency kits, they get exit strategies. Many of us who have never been in corporate America don't think about the exit strategy from corporate America. We only think about getting to corporate America. But what happens when the floor shakes? We don't know how to take the stairs because we've been waiting to get here our entire lives. So we risk everything to stay. And sometimes we risk our souls because we don't know what it means to exit. And that to me is what I'd say to anybody that's starting in corporate America. Do not believe that that will fulfill you. That is what you do. That is not who you are. And you want to achieve, but of what purpose and to what end? It can be selfish because ego plays no role. They will stamp that out quickly when they see that ego. So you have to be of service. And that's one thing I talk about, being kind of a servant leader. I come with an extraordinary level of humility in these spaces and places. Yes, I've done many things, but many of those things they don't understand, nor do they value. So I have to make sure I'm of service so that there's a value there, right? Because when you have value that's indispensable to the business, you then have opportunity. So your goal is to make yourself indispensable. Your goal is not to make yourself famous or known. It's to make yourself indispensable. You have to be known for being indispensable. And that is how you get in the rooms. And once you're in the rooms, you get a few wins under your belt, you make more money for the business, then you now can do all the things that, we can do to set other people up that are not in those rooms for success. You can't do that until you put some numbers on the board. I think far too often we get the perception of being in the room as success. No, that's the starting line. You got to put some points on the board first. And that's, I think, what we should think about when you are early in your career again, but also know that exit strategy, which is why I think a lot of young Black and brown particularly, but all those people who feel like they have a creative instinct like I did as well. make it. A lot of people make stuff up. I was in advertising. Advertising in our industry, we don't make stuff. We make stuff up. We don't have directors on staff. We don't have photographers on staff. We go make it up, sell it, and then we go make it. And usually it's a third-party production company that goes and makes it. Yeah. So if you have the ability to make, do. Don't critique, create. Because if you have the ability to create and you build the ecosystem around your idea in the real world, then you will learn all the things that a company takes for granted because you've done it. And the more you do it, the less you fear doing it again. Again, back to the exit strategy. Because one day you might have to go because of values, because of downsizing, because of whatever. And if you don't know how to do it on your own, then
it'll be done for you.
And you'll get very desperate. And there are people who will do things to hang on and claw, right, by the skin of their teeth to stick to that plan because they don't have a plan B. And corporate America was never my plan A. Being a provider for my family is a plan A. You know, what I do in corporate America is a means to an end. I enjoy it, but again, through that journey, I got to learn. And that's what I see my career as. It's just one long education.
Speaking of exit strategies, was Fras an exit strategy?
My partners will say that. Yeah, they want me to do this full time for sure. It's something I love. You know, I learned a lot about the beverage industry, obviously working at Diageo and working with some of the best flavor houses, you know, on phenomenal brands like Kettle One, you know, Johnny Walker. And what I learned was that there is a craft and there's craftsmen everywhere, but we don't learn those types of craftspeople. We learn people who can cut and sew and sing and produce physical things, but not actually things that we ingest in our body. And that's critically important to have people who have that level of craft and care based on what we put in our bodies. And so that to me showed me another level of what, you know, kind of brand building could be. And for us, it's kind of an expression of those things I learned throughout my career, but with a, you know, kind of accessible health and wellness bent. And I say health and wellness because we have a low calorie, low sugar, product that is, you know, I grew up on sugar water, Kool-Aid, Tang, you know, sweet tea. And I used to say that, you know, we had sweet tea because our life was so sour. And Black folk in the South, we went through a lot. And so a lot of things we put in our body is to, you know, kind of calm the sensations that we don't see in our lives, right? We're not trying to eat regular greens. We're trying to eat greens with all kinds of stuff in it because the life we live isn't fulfilling because so much has been taken from us. So we actually put all that into our food. And sometimes that's not healthy. And so what I want to do is create more balance. And so what Fras is a kind of tribute to the kind of tea culture that we have as Black folk in the South, but also the global tea culture because it's the most ancient, herbal antioxidant in the world. And tea and water are two most, kind of consumed liquids in the world. And so we wanted to get into this space. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. We're early in that, you know, journey. I encourage you all to try it. You can get it online on Amazon as well. And I want to make it accessible to that Southside Chicago mom who wants to get, you know, her cow god moment, like decompress from the day, crack it open and enjoy it. And want to make sure it's priced right. It's accessible. It also looks cool. So I think we can still bring our personal style to whatever we do. So it looks like a sunset for a reason because we're based in Venice Beach. And the magic hour, that sunset hour is kind of the time that at the end of the day, you want to kind of reflect on the day before you go into the evening or to go out, it's party, or crack a Fras open and enjoy.
Wow. So how did you come up with the name? How did you come up with the flavors? What was the process with you and your partners?
It was through, and I think it's a lot to understanding how you move in corporate culture. And corporate culture, at best, should be a reflection of friendship. Meaning, if you have a high level of trust in your corporate culture, you can take risks and have honest conversations and make moves at a pace you couldn't do otherwise. The bureaucracy inside organizations is because they don't have a level of trust with each other. And therefore, they create overly formal processes because they can't create the shortcut to the conversation because there's no trust there. With our crew, we trust each other and we have positions and we have experiences and we are all kind of like the A-team. Everybody has a role. We play our position. So when we move, we can move with pace because we know the formation. And so really it's just honest conversations with friends. And the name Fras came from, again, you know, one of my partners, Bryce Wilson, who you might know from Groove Theory. He's an amazing producer, musician, friend of mine, West Indian, We met in the city, you know, New York, I call home because I lived here longer than I've lived anywhere. And we want to make an ode to, the Caribbean and to Jamaica in particular. And it became personal. My wife's, Jamaican. And so we even leveraged some of her, memories of her late mother, and our community and her aunts. So we actually, that's why hibiscus is one of the flavors, one of the first flavors that we created. So it's a personal journey, that we have as well. That's baked into this brand.
That's awesome. My mom and my dad are both from Jamaica. So just learning about the history and also what the brand stands for is really cool, because the culture out in Jamaica is about good times. It's about laughter. It's about food. It's about dancing. When I look at Fras, I see all those things represented with a little bit of that Venice Beach flair. And I see that cross-cultural collaboration happening through the brand, which is nice.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, if you read the can, it talks about, right, California sunshine, Jamaican love, and Swedish happiness. Now you go, why the hell are you talking about California, Jamaica, and Sweden? Because my partners are Swedish, right? We have a Jamaican connection, and we're based in Venice Beach, to your point, that cross-cultural connectivity. We all love music. We all love people. We all love contributing to culture. And this is our kind of ode to all the things that we've been doing individually and coming together to kind of give us, an opportunity to present to the world something that we think is kind of a thank you, right? Because we think that every can of Frost is a little kind of, symbol of peace. Our mantra is refresh the peace. Yeah. We just want everyone to have, right, a little more peace in their life. And this day and age with the, kind of the drama, some artificial, some manufactured, some real, on, whether it be political or cultural or social, I think we can come together. And I, have told the team that, tea, marijuana, fire, right? Those things brought more people together than anything, right? Because that's many ways the first social network, right? Fire was one of the first, gather around, right? Tell the story. And so for us, that sunset is an example of quote unquote Earth's fire, right? Just bringing people together. And that's what we want to do.
I want to talk about storytelling. I think storytelling is critical for, the brand that we're talking about right now is Frost, and just to hear about the story builds that emotional connection, that belonging. I want to hear from you. How does storytelling play a role in your career? And why is it important for us as Black and brown people to become storytellers?
We definitely need more Octavia Butlers, Chinua Achebes, as well as James Baldwin's, but we need to be able to tell a great story. That's because most memories are based on experiences that have a beginning, middle, and end. And that's the cornerstone of a story. You can't just rattle facts off. You can't just rattle information off. You got to have a beginning, middle, and end. You got to have a, right, protagonist, antagonist. You got to have setting. You got to have all the things, right, that make the idea more visceral. And a story is the best packaging for any idea. And we do need not just marketers, anybody with an idea needs to be able to tell a story. And you can't sell anything. You can't, right, provide anything, because even if you have something to give as a service, you got to be able to tell a story to get people to trust you to accept that service. And so for me, storytelling is critically important. If not, right, in retrospect, the hunter will have his story told. And we need many more on the other side of that fight to be able to tell their stories. Because as you can see, we can whitewash and erase history very fast. And what you are seeing happening, and what I believe, back to your point about storytelling and why it's so important, is because if we do not have stories, you do not have hope, you do not have optimism, you do not have a sense of belonging, you don't have an empowered sense of self. So it actually, right, if someone else tells a story and not you, it dims the future light. And at some point that light will become dark, and we won't have the belief that we all have today. And my goal is to help tell many stories so that, like Sanskrit on the walls, that the generations after us, right, can look and go, okay, someone's done this before. This is not impossible. We are all someone's ancestor, right? So we must tell that story for them to see it, believe it, and become it.
I like how you touched on storytelling as it pertains to entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Like if you have a product, if you have a brand, if you're creating something, you need to have a story. And I think too, you need to be able to tell that story multiple ways and, draw people in, not just to your product, but your brand, and creating that seduction into the brand is really important. Are there any other sort of advice that you have for entrepreneurs right now, especially as the economy is in the dumps, politics is a dumpster fire, geopolitical affairs are going crazy, and I think a lot of us look to creativity and entrepreneurship as an escape from, all that's going on.
We as creatives must create. It's not a luxury. And it's not just because we have a calling. It's because that is what the times, the desire and demand of us. The blues was made when we had far less rights than we have today. People still made music, still told jokes in the darkest of days. If you think about, somebody was singing on a slave ship that brought us here. Just think about that. they decided to continue every day for us to sit here. So I can't fathom it being too bad to move forward. I can't see a day dark enough to not create, to not put something to paper, right? Put an idea in action. And so what I'd say is, as dark and as dreary as it may seem today, this is the brightest day our ancestors ever seen. So if you put it into that context, then yes, it's important to feel, it's important to have concern, but we can't blow it out of proportion and distract ourselves, because grief can also be a distraction, right? And I don't want us to get distracted, because this is a very important moment for us to accelerate, our sense of community and our output. And so what I'd say to those listening, and to any creative, continue to create, but do more of it together. Less silos, more conglomerates. Less islands, more holding groups. We need to do it together. We need to build the ecosystem, vertically integrated. And that to me is what I'd ask, right? There's a role for all of us, whether it be trades, more fine creative, more esoteric and AI-based creativity, more hard skills, soft skills. We need to do it together. And so that's what I'd say is, as much as you want to create, get a crew. The most important, impressive things I've ever done are with crews, right? With a community of people that are like-minded and go all out, right? Like, I love a good crew. So that's what I'd say is click up and don't divide, because again, that crabs in a big barrel mentality, right, is a concern that we all have, because they put us in that barrel one by one. If you stay one by one in that barrel, you'll never get out. And so to me, we got to work together.
You talked about this as the time for us to accelerate. And I totally agree, especially with, there's a lot of backpedaling around here, with a lot of the corporations who we've supported in the past, backpedaling on DEI commitments. How do we stay motivated?
It's a great question. I think part of it is that we should never have looked at success based on the extent to white guilt supporting our needs. So in corporate America, I want to figure out a way for us to all, right, achieve our dreams through kind of hard work, economic, vitality and access. Now, the access comes, again, based in many ways on that guilt. And that guilt is not connected to the bottom line, because the reality is our value to this country, our value to any company, far surpasses any DEI budget. The DEI budget is infinitesimal compared to the value that we as people of color, right, provide. And now DEI also included women, disabled, veterans, a number of people that might be anti because they don't understand the truth. But the reality is we provide a greater value than whatever they've delivered to us within the box of DEI. And if we want to overcome this backtracking, as you say, we got to make sure we can connect it to the economic opportunity that we present. And the flip side of that, the downside of, right, and the downturn of what happens when those dollars go away, right? What happens when that community is no longer as loyal as you thought? Companies can go away as quickly as they can get created. And so we can't assume that we don't have as much power as we do. And so my ask is that we, again, back to the original, point around kind of build community with an economic, kind of framework. Not solely, but we live in a capitalist society, and to ignore that is foolish. And so how do we drive more business? How do we create more value for ourselves and others? Because that's what people will take note of. And the more of us do it, the more it doesn't become a coincidence and a talented 10th and a one-off. The more it becomes the norm. The more it becomes the norm, the more you achieve what DI intended to achieve, which is more of us in those rooms. So I think there needs to be an alternative path than, the current model, which sadly, I think the others who are taking it away feel like it was tokenized. But we have to demand things based on the value we create. And we can only do that together.
We're going to switch to a different topic soon, but I just wanted to really hit that nail home, because I think about how connected we were in the past with so little, and how now we have so much more. And I actually think it disconnects us to a degree.
Yes.
And I think so much about my parents growing up in Jamaica, or our ancestors many years ago, who just had so much like common spaces and shared their resources. And, no one's asking me for sugar anymore. This podcast was always meant to uplift all, all when the rise when the tide rises, all boats
Yes.
rise. And that's always been the mentality. I think that is really what you're hitting home is we need to think, how are we rising up and bringing other people up with us?
We over me, always. And that's what I mean by kind of being a servant leader, right? You want to build a movement that is positive, progressive, and supportive of all, not one. And that's why you need to see yourself of value. And yes, we need to learn from and lift up. That's all I'd say is how can we, as a people and as creators, no matter what race, creed, right, religion you have, how do we learn from each other and how we lift up each other? That to me is what I'd say. And to your point about the sugar, right? Say that's a talent. Say you need a talent. Say you need someone that's good at PR, or say you need someone that's good at AI prompts, or say you need someone that's good at photography. That's the sugar, right? That's the flour. That's the, hey, you got any eggs, right? That's the sense of community that we're talking about. That's what I'm saying. Now, there's so many apps and there's so many opportunities to be able to do that globally now, and we're doing it far less than we should. Not saying we're not doing it. We're doing it far less than we should. And that is what I would love for us to do more of. I had a profound experience taking about a month off and traveling throughout the continent. So I'm wearing it on my neck. And I got this when I was in Tanzania, but I was in Rwanda, I was in Ghana, I was in Nairobi in Kenya, I was in South Africa, and just connecting with the young, talented creatives and the young people in those cities, in those towns, and going, how many of us on the stateside or even in Europe have not even thought about connecting with them when those that we aspire to be like, learn from a lot of these fashion houses, they went there first and saw a lot, and we don't even realize the origins of where those things come from. And so to me, if you can connect virtually, physically, right, with others that are creating like you in all walks of life, that's the power of travel, right? But we could do it digitally, we could do it physically. And I'd encourage, if there was an investment to be had about anything, whether it be, kind of self-help books and, LinkedIn learning, you name it, conferences, travel before you go to a conference.
I'm thinking of when you said being connected. TikTok now has Hillman Academy. It's like a bunch of Black content creators creating courses, free courses for everyone, which is just incredible to me. When we get it, we locked in and we really do some incredible stuff.
Yes.
I'm excited and it's really been tough for me to express how excited I am, although right now it is very tough to be happy.
Yes.
I have seen so much innovation.
Well, think about it. I mean, look at Khan Academy. That is profound. We can do that too. A model exists. We can do that with them.
Yeah.
If we believe we can. So there are a lot of models, right? Bill Gates once famously said that, when he has a problem, the first thing he does is find out who had a problem like that before and go ask them how they solved it, right? There are many people dealing with the same things we're dealing with. You're not dealing with the first thing ever and only, right? You're never alone. There's always someone going through it. So seek them out, right? That network is a direct connection to your net worth. So reach out, seek out. And that to me is what I'm excited by, to your point, because there's so much more opportunity to be connected than ever before. How are we using it to uplift? How are we using it to propel us forward? Or are we using it to be distracted? Is it purely an entertainment platform with millions of channels? Or is it the free, most powerful educational system ever invented since what I used to love, the library?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do we look at our phones as the most powerful tool in the world? Or do we look at it as the most portable screen to distract us from the sad reality that we're living? And I tell my kids, and, marketers say this all the time, if it's free, you're the product, right? So like, they're moving you, right? They're selling you if it's free. And so just realize that. So for us, time is what we're being, using and wasting. And that's the most valuable resource that we all have. And so, I'm optimistic as you are, but I really want us to think about what matters more to us: temporary happiness with that little video that we saw, or, sustainable happiness with the kind of economic stability that is needed for communities to take care of itself.
Excellent. Last sort of topic that we're going to touch on is sports and fashion. February is not only Black History Month, it's spring, summer for Fashion Week. And all over the world, we're celebrating fashion. Most recently, Willy Chavarria and Adidas teamed up, painted the city up in Paris. And I just wanted to hear more about, that collaboration and what was it like to be on the ground?
Well, first of all, shout out to Willy. Everyone thinks that we know everybody. Don't know him. I'm just a fan just like you are. But yes, our brand worked with him and was able to see that show and see that come to life in Paris firsthand, kind of 64 Impalas rolling around Paris with roses on it. It was just like East LA and, the community, right? Boa Heights out here, out in the West Coast, like all of those things that you love and that feel, intimate and connected to, and see it on the stage presented with such pride was phenomenal to see, and I think it showed that the culture that we all come from, and I say we, many of us of color come from, is the most powerful social force or forces in the world. Like, you talk about, yeah, I'm a DC guy, but I'll shout out Vibranium, right, in Black Panther, but Vibranium is culture. That is the powerful, right, renewable resource that we have. And for Willy to do what he did, the fact that we actually have something like hip hop, right, that we created. It was a figment, right, of our culture's imagination collectively. And it exists as the most powerful force that drives so much money, but it was invented by people, right? It did not exist. It was a day it didn't exist and a day it did. And I think we can't forget that, is that we've built powerful forces, bigger and worth more than, right, any company, right? The power of hip hop is more valuable than, right, Tesla. When you think about the economic power that it has in the places it can touch, fashion being one, right, and culture. So to see Willy do what he did there and bring Black and Brown together on that runway was an act of defiance, an act of pride, an act of love that I don't take for granted at all. But I was really, really happy to see that.
It's moving, even from the screen. Like I watched it from a screen. It makes me happy that those shows get uplifted the most, because I think if anyone's watching and looking beyond the show, everyone is craving that visibility into what it really actually is to, be an American. Like that was an amazing display of Americanism and not whitewashed.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It was storytelling.
Yeah.
He has something to say. And that's the power. When we hold the pen, this is what can happen. And so we need to make sure that we become, well-versed in storytelling, so we can craft those stories. So when we have that moment, the story is the most powerful thing that people remember, but we got to tell better stories, right? And that to me is what he did, a very powerful story, multidimensional, multi-sensory, and I loved it.
Yeah. I'm also been really appreciating a lot of the legacy brands supporting independent brands, designers, what have you. Adidas has been doing that with Grace Wells Bonner, Willy, I believe Jerry Lorenzo, Fear of God, is now, working with Adidas. So like Adidas has really done I would even say like the work to capitalize on this moment that we're seeing, where it feels like fashion is synonymous with clothes. I don't even think fashion is clothes anymore. At this point, no. I don't think we're talking about clothes. We're talking about people and movements.
Yes. And we're talking about expression, because clothes become style. Style becomes how you wear those clothes, and that's an expression. So it is, to your point, much deeper than just the craftsmanship and the stitch count and, right, the GSMs, right? If you want to get technical, that's not what it's about. Now, it's important to actually have the level of craft, because now with Instagram and, right, with a bunch of, kind of experts, armchair experts out there, you learn more. So you get a peek behind the curtain. So the standards have to rise, which I like. I'm not at all concerned with that, right? I want to, kind of take the veil away and let people know how it's really done, because the more people know, the more they can up the game, right? You have to be able to know the game to subvert the game. So I want to make sure that people have access so that they can actually put their own spin on it. But I do think that, as you said, is not distinctly different. It's all one. And I think that's a broader conversation around culture, where when you get things so fast and at the speed of culture that you have at your fingertips, things don't kind of, marinate in one place for long. They don't feel regional anymore. They feel national immediately. They feel international immediately, which means they feel everywhere immediately. And I think that's why it's all feeling like one thing. And when you have a fresh voice like Willy that feels like it comes from a place, and it doesn't come from Instagram, is why I think it is so impactful and so powerful. So I still think that no matter where you are in the world, right, the old music analogy, right, be big on your block, be big in your town, right, be big in your local radio station, then go national. I think there's something to be said about putting that work in. I do really think it's important. Yes, it can go viral and go global fast, but you got to be able to put those rungs in the ladder right? Because if you don't have those rungs in the ladder, then you fall fast because you never worked your way up one step at a time. You might rise fast, but you'll fall fast. But you put that work in, like Willy's been around for a long time. People know what he's done before he had his own label. And I think that's also why people appreciate the journey, appreciate the grind. And now you can document your grind if you want, but don't ignore the grind. And if you do, then, right, you might have, a blip of success, but you have a lot more dark days thereafter. But with the grind, you have longevity.
So what is it like working at Adidas?
Well, I'm in a little bubble in LA. So I go back and forth to Germany, but we have a crew in LA, Originals LA, and our kind of OG LA crew and the DTLA team, downtown Los Angeles. We're in the fashion district down there. I am proud to say that office is by far the most diverse office, not just in the company's history, but probably in many ways, probably our footwear industry. I mean, analysts even said so when they toured the office. We give them a tour of the office. So that's what I'm proudest of. So there's multiple companies and cultures, right? When you think about an organization that's 62,000 strong. But I do think that even though it is, vast and is a multinational, it still has a challenger brand mentality. Yet avant-garde nature of some of the collaborations we've been doing, how we actually create a canvas for creatives to do their thing. I'm proudest of that Willy could be able to do his thing at a brand like Adi, that some other brands wouldn't be willing to take that kind of risk on a Grace, because Grace wasn't who she is now then. And even P, right? Pharrell and what he's done, he's an amazing spirit. He talks about, us being intuits, where we actually work based on our intuition and actually speaking more as an intuit, right? Which is very different than intellectual, right? It's heart versus head. And so, I guess the brand has been able to listen to his heart more often when it comes to kind of its relationship with creatives. But we also need to take that same mentality with how we teach, how we treat our employees and our people internally. So not just the exceptional folk, but everybody. And that to me is a journey that I think every brand and company is on, is how you take the best of itself and make it the most and not a pocket here or there. And so I think that's the journey that, not just our brand and our company, but all companies are on, which is your best day. How do you make that every day?
Yeah. Nice. Is it Adidas or Adidas?
Depends on where you are. In America, it's Adidas, okay. Right? Internationally, it's Adidas, because Adi Dassler, right? That is the founder, right? That's the name. His name is Adi Dassler. So Adidas.
Nice.
Yes. But Run DMC told us how to say it. So
I was gonna say
I'm not gonna argue with Run and DMC. Nah, not at all.
Any last piece of advice?
Well, I've been known to say to my kids at home. So Sydney, Sienna, this is for you. But I've always said OEA. OEA is the acronym. It's a mantra. Outwork everybody always. There was a coach, and I saw it on social media, and I've heard this also from my own coach, which is be the best at things that don't take talent. Meaning, work ethic doesn't take talent, it just takes desire, right? So if you play basketball, you play football, you play the sport, running back on defense doesn't take talent. You're not gonna be the fastest. You just got to want it more, right? Getting a rebound doesn't take height necessarily. It takes will. And so if you really want to be great and be indispensable, then you got to take the stuff that might be seen as grunt work and be excellent at that, right? So raise the floor, not just the ceiling where your spikes are and your talents are, but raise the floor. Be great at the things that don't take talent and outwork everybody always. Make everybody look lazy. Like if you do that, you're well on your way. And the other is, as I said earlier, be indispensable, right? Be of service. That's how you're indispensable. Create value wherever you're at. Support, help, whoever, because they remember that, hey, if I need to do something, I want that person in the room, right? Because they've contributed. They're not an albatross. They're not holding us back. They're pushing us forward, and they will actually do the work. Because the thing about corporate America that I don't think everyone understands is, yeah, you see the sexy stuff on IG. It's not the boring stuff. Be great at that too. It's not all front row fashion show. There's some meetings on a Tuesday in February that you got to be at, and there's a presentation you got to do. And there is a meeting you got to mediate, and there's conflict between this department and that department that you got to be able to sort out. If they don't trust you to handle that, and they only want to put you in front of the camera or put you or you only want to be in those exciting, sexy moments, then you will be seen, in my opinion, as a superficial, kind of exec, and not an indispensable, kind of leader in the business. And that to me is what I think you want to aspire to be, as an indispensable leader. Not just, the kind of sexy, cool kid, because, being cool is a life stage, not a skill set. We all get old. Are you going to do this for 20 years, 30 years, 5 years, right? So there will always be someone younger and cooler. The question is, what can you provide when you're not the youngest and the coolest?
That's a great way to close us out. On that note, I would like to do a toast.
Okay.
Let's do a toast.
All right.
Have it. You have a specific flavor?
No, you got it. Hibiscus and peach are the two flavors.
Let's do it. Cheers.
Cheers.